Welcome into the Quest Number 9 podcast. My name is Seth Warner. Today we're going to talk about Kentucky basketball from fans' perspective. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Kentucky having several visitors coming in the next couple weeks and one visitor that just left. The visitor that just left has a crazy schedule. International big man, one of the best international prospects for 2026, potential reclass player, but just visited to Kentucky, has 6 visits in 6 days with that crazy schedule I was talking about. Next up's Duke. We were the second visit of the 6. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes going forward. He visited on Wednesday. My understanding is it went well. He went golfing with the team, was really hanging out with the guys. Really strong impression from this Kentucky staff. Really enjoyed it. Not a whole lot of intel just from him right now, just because he's had a crazy travel schedule going to the next visit. But we'll know more and more as these visits get past us, and we'll really get into the deep dive of where he sets going into a potential commitment. But right now, really all the reporting is saying that he's not in a big hurry to commit just yet. Really, what the timeline needed for him to do all these visits so close together was because of his international schedule, Barcelona, their season, and how all that kind of came together and how the schedule had to have it. He's not set on that, making a decision after these 6 visits. It could potentially draw out. So that puts the reclass in a up for discussion of that not happening. And next up is Duke, a team that after a Malwatch from last year and several other international connections, they've been a team that's very much prioritized him, even if he's a reclass guy. Wants to be a one and done player, very long, athletic, like I said, one of the best players, probably the best international player. And it'll be really interesting to see how he prioritizes and how, as a guy with potential to reclass, how he sees the landscape. And if he stays in 2026, Kentucky, I think, will be very much involved. Malachi Moreno, realistically, how I see the roster shaking up, would probably be the starter, but we would have to really see how everything just works out. Could he potentially be a 2-year plan? Seems like he really likes Kentucky, and it'll be interesting as the process goes on and on. Like I was saying, we get more information. Another guy that we've talked about a little bit on here, but not a whole lot, Deron Rippey Jr. His visit's coming up. What's tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow, the 1st of August. He's going to be here 1st through the 3rd. He'll be here actually on his birthday. Really athletic point guard who can do a lot of different things. Actually also went to the same high school as Otega Owe. Another connection between these two, between Deron Rippey and Kentucky. Really athletic, the most athletic point guard in the class, maybe the most athletic player in the class, period. At 6'1", 6'2", really does a good job of getting 2 feet in the paint and being explosive. Really just one of those guys that can do a lot of different things on the floor and impact the game in a lot of different ways, even with his playmaking. Also, a guy that averaged 8 assists in the 3SB circuit and was on one of the better teams and was really competitive and one of the better players there. And also still has a lot of different offers coming into this stretch where Kentucky is the first fall, starting to get into fall visit that Deron Rippey has. So his recruitment will probably be stretched out a little bit longer. They're all in. We're not 100% sure on the timeline with him, but things are starting to heat up with Deron Rippey and his potential commitment and what we'll see going forward with the athletic 6'2" point guard. And another guy that we talked about, but really has said his visit and it's getting closer, Caleb Holt. Like I said in the past, Otega OA vibes, 6'4", 6'5", a two guard who's really athletic, big. Brandon Ramsey, friend of the program. I heard him talking the other day. For his bet, he was there at the 3SB circuit. Best perimeter defender in this class. Long, athletic, understands how to stay with this guy without having too much, not using his hands too much, really being able to body up against these guards and use his physicality and athleticism at 6'4", 6'5". And his visit's coming up September 12th through the 14th. It's still about a month, a little over a month away, but these visits can go really fast and it will be here before we think. And also with Caleb Holt, Kentucky has been gaining ground with him after he was at the USA camps with Coach Pope. That really impacted him a lot as Adidas guy, so that kind of works against us. But Kentucky was able to really connect with him and Coach Pope as on court coaches and really be able to see what it would be like to be coached by Coach Pope. Another guy that I don't think we've talked about at all on here, Anthony Thompson. He plays for Indiana Elite, one of the top 10-ish players, kind of been a riser, was once a 4-star, 6'8", 6'9", really long athletic wing, really long too. Also, a friend of the program, Zach Gagan. I heard him talking about it. His wingspan, he's probably 6'8", 6'9", and his arms almost reach his knees. Probably 7'3", 7'4" wingspan. Really long, athletic, and he's just really smooth. He's not the most explosive athlete in the world, but he does a really good job of staying in his own pace and just mobility wise, he can really move laterally well. But he doesn't have the most pop in this that out of the guys we saw at the 3SB circuit. And with him, Kentucky is a part of his top 7 with the likes of Michigan, Indiana, Purdue, Texas, Ohio State, and North Carolina. A lot of really high-end teams with North Carolina, another blue blood. Indiana, a team kind of on the rise with their new coach and having a very fresh team. Overall, Kentucky is one of the top contenders for Anthony Thompson, who is one of the risers. Him and Duron Rippey are two guys that have really been rising the ranks, I think, especially Duron Rippey, a guy that did not have a Kentucky offer and really wasn't on the map till probably a month or so ago, month and a half. And overall, there's been a lot of talk about this 2026 class not being the most talented, but from my perspective, I really say this class probably doesn't have the most guaranteed. Like, he has all the traits, all the skills with the instant impact college player. Like Anthony Thompson could have some hit and miss to him with the physicality and some of those things that still need to develop. Duron Rippey, a guy that shooting could be an issue, shot it well at the 3SB circuit, but physicality, like I said, shooting and being under control, really fast athletic guard that can get sped up. But I think overall this class will probably have a few guys that hit, a few guys that miss, but it still has some guys that have really high ceilings. We'll just see how that translatability goes from high school to college. And I think in this class we'll have a couple guys that don't hit in don't they hit in high school, they don't hit in college, but they end up being really good pros just because of the developmental piece, having a longer period of time because they probably won't stay in college that long because they have so many high tools and just how the NBA game is played in the space and just they're two different games between college and pro. And overall, like I was saying, other than really, I think Tyron Stokes, who has, I think kind of the full package to be an instant impact player in college and pro level. It'll be interesting to see how all these other guys kind of fill out the next 6 months to 9 months to see how the developmental goes with some of these guys that have to tweak some things to really at the college level be able to succeed in what places they end up being able to go to in college and how that development goes. And also Kentucky for their practices are starting to get to the end. We're in the last week or so before they all go home for about 3, where then they'll come back for the first they'll come back for when the semester starts at the end of August. So we'll be able to really be able to see when they get in full practices with guys like Yelovich who have not arrived on campus. We have Jaden Quaintance, and from really, I talked about this last episode, but what we're really getting from report wise and the stuff we're getting out of summer camps and summer practices, Kentucky, I really like their floor coming out now, really getting to the end. We understand we have a lot of really good athletes, physicality, and I feel like we have a lot of really solid shooters, is the feel I'm getting from it. And you have a lot of guys that are going to create open shots for others. So those solid 3-point shooters are going to get high percentage looks. But for Kentucky, there's a handful of guys that I feel like will change the ceiling or change the outcome of this team. Jasper Johnson's one of them. Jack Pilgrim on their last episode of Sources Say was talking about how he's had a little bit of Rob Dillingham-esque when they did their international thing for like the USA when they played different countries in Canada, just showing sparks of it, but never being able to hit his full potential. Be interesting to how the weight room affects him. He went to the USA camp, so that got him a little bit behind. But even in my book, I'm pretty high on him as a guy that can be an elite scorer. Probably not going to be the most consistent, but I feel good about him coming down and knocking down a high percentage of his threes and being a guy that can get to the basket when needed and just knock down shots in the flow of the offense. And that's something that Mark Pope's offense is going to create. But is he going to go to that next tier of elite shot maker, scorer, Jackson Robinson esque with a little bit more athleticism and probably ball handling? And that will be how that kind of transition, if he's elite, he raises the ceiling, I think, of this really Kentucky team while having still a high floor with a lot of experience, athleticism, and just a combination of a lot of other things. Another guy that I feel like changes this Kentucky team if he can really hit his ceiling, Jaden Quaintance. I have high expectations for Jaden Quaintance this year. I'm high on Jasper. Jaden Quaintance, I have high expectations. A guy most of last year as a 17-year-old freshman was averaging 10 and 10 in the Big 12 in one of the better basketball conferences. I feel like his passing ability will come in and the 3-point shot will be interesting to see how that develops. But getting somewhere around that 30% mark ish, he was in the low 20s at Arizona State, but it'll be interesting to see how his transition comes over. I think something that's going to surprise people is just his pure lateral athleticism. With that knee, it'll be interesting to see if that translates over. But one of the more gifted athletes Kentucky's had in the last probably since Bam in my book. Probably, yeah, most gifted athlete since Bam Adebayo, 6'9". I was looking at it. They always talk about how big Bam is at like wingspan wise because he can make up for being only 6'9", playing against these bigger bigs that are 6'11", 7 feet tall. But actually, his wingspan's only like 7'1". When you have Jaden Quaintance at 7'3", 7'4", that just shows you the length and athleticism. And Jaden Quaintance has showed at Arizona State, he can switch 1 through really 4. He can, or 5 through 2. He can guard 4 or 5 different positions just at this point last year at Arizona State, and also one of the best shot blockers in the country, and get putting in an offensive system that I feel like will enhance some of his skill sets and allow to show what he showed in high school as a hub and the ability to put it on the floor and just be able to do a lot of different things. Cam Williams' development will be interesting. The reports coming out is he struggled with physicality, being able to just like get to a spot. Shooting's been good. Putting it on the floor has been a struggle, but good athlete, tall, long. Antonio Reeves has kind of been a comp I've heard, but with him, I think Antonio Reeves putting on the floor is a little bit of a stretch. Antonio Reeves, when he came to Kentucky, was more of a primary creator at his place before. Cam Williams at Tulane was more of a catch and shoot guy, but still has some of that same kind of juice, long. I think he could be kind of the scorer Antonio Reeves was, but just more of a catch and shoot, better defender with his size and just a little bit longer. But overall, I think if Cam Williams could take like a Otega-Oweh, it's kind of a stretch right now just seeing how he's been playing. But going from the summer workouts to actual basketball is a lot of time in basketball terms. Things can really change if you look at Rob Dillingham and these different guys that make big jumps in these small period of time. Braden Hawthorne's another guy that we still have some questions about. I feel like uh, coming out of these summer practices, kind of finishing up. We all know he's long, athletic, has all these skills, but overall, we need to see more consistency physicality wise. A guy that in a year or two could really be one of the elite wings, I feel like, in college basketball, just with his athleticism, but he really needs to put on some weight. It'll be interesting to see because we know he'll get on the floor at least a little bit in some of these blowouts, how affects the game and how he does with even the physicality of the game, and just being able to see him on the floor will be very intriguing for me. I don't see him as much as a guy that really changes the ceiling of Kentucky, but I think he's still a very interesting piece, long term and short term, of how he fits on the floor with just his lack of physicality, but just raw skills. And some of the guys that I just really feel comfortable about what we're hearing and what we've seen in the past. Trent Noah, knockdown shooter, understands his role, is going to be at the right place, right time. Otega-Oweh, physical, athletic. I feel like he's more intense on keeping up those mental mistakes, something that really hurt him last year, losing the ball with his ball handling. Sometimes inconsistent finishing. Some of those little things really would amplify his abilities, I feel like. Another guy that I feel really confident in that he's going to be a high impact player for Kentucky and really be able to control the game and give Kentucky a lot of different things is Denzel Aberdeen, coming off that national championship. A guy that at 6'4", 6'5", a long athletics. Somebody was saying 42-inch vertical. I don't think they have official measurements for that, but really athletic. Last year shot 40% from three on catch and shoot attempts, shot about 35, 36% from three. But Kentucky will be getting downhill a lot, so he'll have some good opportunities. Mo Diabate, the shooting will be interesting. Defensively, we know what he gives you. Rebounding, we know what he gives you. This is a team that's going to be playing at a very fast pace. He'll give us another dimension with that, with his just ability to go and just try to dunk on somebody. He gives us kind of that similar Otega-Oweh dog mentality in transition, where he's just going to go try to yam it. And that's outside of Ortega last year. We really didn't have anybody that was going to try to just shatter the backboard going downhill in transition. I think that would really help Kentucky speed up the pace of the game. Probably to me, one, I'm trying to give you a good list. So the guys that really give you a firm list about the guys that I think really raised Kentucky's ceiling. I didn't talk about Jalen Lowe. Really solid reporting from him. Still a little bit of turnover issues. Shooting can be inconsistent, but really understands how to control the offense and can deliver to others. And I feel like as more reps and reps he gets, if he can stay somewhere in that 32, 35% on one or two attempts a game, I feel like Kentucky can really be in that stratosphere. And if he can keep that turnovers low, and I really like how Kentucky's offense is set up to do that, getting the ball out of his hands and doing that. Guys that I feel like there's still question marks and they can raise our ceiling. Like I said, Jasper Johnson, the physicality, Yelovich, just because he hasn't got here, just really skilled big man who at 6'10 has a 7'2 wingspan, long, rangy athlete. The shooting will be interesting to see how that keeps on developing. But overall, I think he's a guy that really could elevate this team's ceiling as one of the best rebounders in his league last year, going against grown men as a 21-year-old coming into college. I think that'll give him an advantage. And Jaden Quaid's just because he hasn't been able to really get on the floor, but I think his ceiling is really high. But he also has a really high floor just because of what we've seen last year, as long as the recovery goes properly, as we're hearing it is. One other guy for, I think, the high floor part of this, that's Malachi Moreno. Guys that I don't have as many questions and I feel like have a high floor. Like I said, Malachi Moreno defensively is going to be very solid, rebound the ball, might turn over a little bit just being new to the offense, but still make solid decisions. Not the best shooter, but it's going to set really hard screens and just be able to do a lot of different things on the floor really well, but not anything great. Adding to that list of guys that are questionable, but could really help Kentucky push us forward. Brandon Garrison had some highs and lows through these summer practices. Could show off a block, then have some mental errors is really what I'm questioning sometimes. We wanted the maturity to push forward, but we really haven't seen that just yet of what I'm seeing and what I'm reading. So overall, Brandon can really push to the next level, just be consistent, kind of similar to how Malachi Moreno is just really consistent while still showing some of those peaks, but your valleys not being as bad. One other player I think I didn't talk about, but was really strong until his injury was Colin Chandler. Colin Chandler shot the ball reportedly really well before going down. A guy that really impressed me last year with his ball handling and being one of the better shooters on the team. Defensively, we know he's high energy, good build, 6'5", 6'6", and has some of that length and pop to him athletically. And defensively will just impact the game in a lot of different ways. And we saw him really be able to put it on the floor and get to the basket and finish. And that's all from the Quest Number 9 podcast. My name is Seth Warner. And if you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. Also, if you like this content, some of the intel and video information I got for this episode, I'm going to put in the description. One of them is Sources A. Their new episode came out on Tuesday. They were talking about some of the Colin Chandler, Brandon Garrison stuff. I would highly suggest go checking that out. Here Comes the Boom with Jacob Polachek, another friend of the program. I got some of the stuff from there. Zoom Action did a new episode just talking about the recruiting, and I'll have all those in the description if you want to go check those out. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.